welcome to the Policy and Resources Committee this evening. First item on the agenda is the minutes of last week, and I sign those as an accurate record. Thank you. And moving on to absence of members, I've received apologies from Councillor Stock, who has intentionally withdrawn from this meeting this evening. Councillor Stock holds a position, an unpaid voluntary position at Middlesex University as Pro-Chancellor, and to avoid any perception, perceived or real conflict of interest, she decided to not attend today. She is able to attend, but she decided not to, and is substituted by Councillor Grover. Welcome, who is chairman of the Audit Committee. Councillor Dushinsky is unable to attend and is being substituted by Councillor Melvin Cohen. Welcome. Councillor Houston is substituted, I gather, by Councillor Schneiderman. Welcome. And Councillor Moore, through no fault of her own, as she's unable to attend at the very last minute, and we're having contact with her, unfortunately, due to the last minute meeting. So that covers the absence of members of everyone else. Everybody else is here. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Grants. No report of the monitoring officer. Which takes us to item 5, public questions and comments. We've had the 4 questions, and each questioner is entitled to ask a supplementary question at committee. And the first one on the agenda is Sharon Ryan. Is Sharon Ryan here?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
My question was answered. Do you want me to read it all out?
No. So this is an opportunity. Now you've seen the response, you have the right to ask a supplementary follow-up if you so wish.
I do, yes. Thank you very much.
So you're welcome to sit down, and there's the middle button on the microphone. If you press that down, we should all be able to hear you.
Right. Thank you very much for having me.
Push it once.
Is that it?
Just tap it once, it turns it on.
That's it.
Right. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you for answering the question. But I'm just wondering where these 5 re-provided spaces will be. Because from what I understand, millions of pounds have been spent drawing up these plans. In which case, why haven't those 5 spaces been re-provided already in the plans? And also, the 2 spaces that it says will remain unchanged, does that mean that they won't become disabled spaces?
They won't be disabled.
Well, from what I've seen on plans, they will become disabled. But what it says here, the answer to my question, it says that they will remain unchanged, which to me means not disabled. So I'm just wondering, are they going to be disabled or not? Because if so, I understand that disabled spaces are needed, but that's 2 less spaces for residents.
No, thank you for your questions. I think we do need some assistance from an officer to talk, because I believe we haven't quite found yet exactly where these 5 spaces will be. And in introducing the report later on, I may as well say this now. What we are agreeing tonight is like a master plan. It's not the absolute detail on the ground. What will follow is a detailed planning application that will be subject to a further round of public consultation, and within that there will be detail about the design of the building, where the car park spaces are, the usage of the building, the conditions of usage. All that sort of granular detail will come to the Strategic Planning Committee, and as I say, it's a statutory consultation process again. So there will be more detail to follow. Not every detail, single part of this is in tonight. But I'll just if you do have any more information on the 5 spaces and whether the 2 spaces remaining, whether they remain as they are now, or whether they will be converted to disabled parking or something similar.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So we have found places for 5 spaces, and the plan has been yours at the moment. So that will now start in the being said as part of the planning. kind of taking away too many space at the moment and put result of that. So we will action.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Roots.
Thank you. Is this?
Just push it once.
When I say right,
Is that right?
that's it.
Good evening. I'm glad to see that you all seem to have survived Freedom Day, which is famous. Hope you're all well. My question, I've had usual anodyne response to a question of some seriousness. Councillors will balance the needs of local residents and stakeholders via the public interest. My point is, I think, that the whole plan, from its inception, the Hendon Hub, when it was first accidentally released, and I saw it in 2019, is a disaster. I agree, and I will admit, that there are alterations within the current plan. But I think the whole thrust, as it were, of public opinion in the Hendon area is not for the plan to be tinkered with, not for the plan to have of bits and little bits extra and give chances to possibly to view the ornate fixtures of Hendon Library. What people want is to keep their library, and what people want is they don't want these new intrusive buildings stuck on them, thereby turning into...
Are we coming to the question?
Yeah, well, I want to know why hasn't the plan been rejected totally? Why are we being faced with it again? Are we going to be faced with it I don't know why it shouldn't be withdrawn in its entirety.
Mr. Roots, I think your question will be answered when we come to the next one item as to why we believe, with the revisions that we've made, that we believe that this is now an improved proposal and a proposal that will enhance the area. I think you and I are going to disagree fundamentally beyond that.
It's illegal, it's been done illegally, the whole thing, from beginning to end.
Can you not?
Mr. Roots, I'm sorry, there are other people to ask questions.
Yes, I'm very brief.
I'd be very
I
pleased
simply
with the
want
time
to
you've
know
had.
why it can't be withdrawn and why we're going to be faced with it forever. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two questions are from Mr. Mason, and you have a supplementary question per written question, so two supplementary questions.
Good evening, councillors. I've reviewed the responses to my two questions. The first answer is not correct. The second paragraph of the first question fails to acknowledge the legal requirement for a public interest test. Reading that second paragraph on its own is therefore incorrect. The answer needs to be corrected. That is not the question. The question for this one is there or is there not a whip applied to the Schedule 12 vote under item 14, which directs the particular candidates to vote one way or another? A simple yes or no will suffice.
No.
Thank you very much indeed.
I think that answer will be proven when one of the council speaks later on.
That's great. You can answer that question.
Next question.
Right. The next question is, does the chair believe that there is no overlap between a vote for Schedule 12A and EIR legislation. I state that there is, and that a vote to withhold the information under Schedule 12 is exactly the same in law as a vote to withhold information under the EIR request. So that's the question. Do you understand it? Before you answer that,
I do understand the question.
Before you answer that, I would also say that the response itself is waffle.
So, Mr. Mason, we're not voting this evening on whether an item is exempt. That decision has already been made in consultation with our monitoring officer, myself as chairman, and that process has gone through the clearance process. So we're not voting this evening for something to be exempt. We will be voting to go into exempt session. That if we do indeed do that, discuss exempt matters. So the vote this evening, the motion to go into exempt session, that sounds very nuanced, but there is a big difference there. And we have been advised, and I trust and believe this advice, that we have every legal right, as we have done numerous times, dozens of times, certainly throughout my 15, 16 years on the council, to go into exec session. And we do understand as council, we are very senior councils there, and we do understand what exempt means and the advice that's given to us.
A Schedule 12 exemption under other circumstances, I absolutely agree, would be correct. So it's incorrect to apply those circumstances to this circumstance. You are talking to somebody, there are only about 2 or 3 of us who have taken matters to the upper tribunal, which is effectively the Court of Appeal on Information Rights. I too, therefore, know what I'm talking about, and I suggest the monitoring officer does not.
Well, the monitoring officer and all that work with her have my absolute 100% confidence. Okay, so we now move on to the next. Thank you all those who contributed to that part of the agenda. Thank you. We now move on to petition, item 7, and the petitioner is Ms. Asher.
Yeah, Gabby Asher.
Yes, you have 3 minutes to address. The microphone has been left off for you. And your 3 minutes will begin when you do, and we'll give you 1 minute more when we come to the end. Thank you.
Hendon Library is the flagship Barnet library located in the Civic Centre of Barnet. The people who signed this petition want our library to stay in its 100-year home. We believe moving the flagship Barnet Library from a majestic, iconic building to what looks like a set from a TV show on the ground floor of an ugly, hulking accommodation block is to the great detriment of residents. To quote our MP, I share the dismay of the entire loss of the historic library building, and I'm unclear why the space cannot be updated to accommodate everything being proposed for a new library. We've been told the move is because the current building isn't fit to house a state-of-the-art library. I've consulted with Libraries Connected. Everything from shelves to a makerspace can be accommodated in the current building. Can the council not afford to upgrade the heating, a roof, etc.? And if so, how did we get here? About 20 years ago, Hendon Library was extensively refurbished for the 21st century. In a successful 2007 pitch to modernise Kensington Central Library, this refurb was cited as the gold standard because it had generated a 40% increase in Hendon Library's use, and the building inspired, excited and delighted its users and supported a sense of civic pride. But in the following 10 years, Hendon Library services were cut and cut. Another refurb in 2017 saw 1,600 square metres given away, leaving us with 200, and oppressive hutches with restricted public access. And now residents are to be banished to a location with the gravitas of a Tesco Metro. Also, after 2 years planning, not one provision was put in place for community groups to be made homeless by the Hendon Hublands. It's only because of our feedback a new location with insufficient space has been suggested. Where? The ground floor of another uni building. I urge the committee to consider that the whole library building be returned to the people so it can be used not just as a library and community hub for Hendon, but for all of Barnet, housing local amenities, following the examples of Bath, Glossop and Chelsea Wood libraries. In a post-COVID era, the CIPD report 40% of UK employers expect half their workforce to work regularly from home. We need a decent space. Residents are looking to our Conservative-led council to conserve and be innovative. You are in a position to repair some of the battering our lives have recently taken. I implore you to use that power for good, to enhance, not destroy, the sense of place, learning, history, civic pride and social unity here, to reconsider giving away the last of our civic crown jewels, and to ensure that residents continue to be an equal partner with the university and not a footnote in Hendon. So please, let us keep our library building.
You're welcome to stay. You don't have to answer them, but you're welcome to stay to answer that. It's completely up to you. So, Councillor Bishop.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sasha, thank you for your speech. I agree with every word that you said. Can I ask, are you familiar with the Council's recent move of Fishley Central Library from its old building to a new one?
I am, which was also described as a state-of-the-art library.
Yes.
It was going to be a state-of-the-art library.
Yes, and are you happy with the fact that the promises that were made initially on what services would be in that library weren't entirely honoured in the final product? And are you worried that the same might happen again?
I think that it really goes without saying it's very hard to trust. There's been so much trust kind of with residents shelter over the years because there have been promises and it hasn't been delivered. And using words like state of the art, it just doesn't. We can all see what's happening. We're going to be on the ground floor of an accommodation building. It's post-COVID. We want, the community have come together. Just on our Facebook group, we've got 500 members, and people want to get involved. They want to be part of something. And it's just so if we can't, however much you kind of spin it and say, oh, it's for our benefit. It simply isn't for our benefit. We just, how can we trust that you're going to deliver when you haven't got any, there was going to be a massive brick new fancy library in the Arts Depot and that never transpired either. You can understand why our trust is a bit kind of wobbly.
So, can we please keep to this? Okay, it wasn't the council's decision not to go to the Arts Depot, by the way. I think, and I've got some questions about the accuracy of your petition in a second. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you. I was going to ask whether you were not excited to have access to the staircase, which I believe is one of the proposed benefits. But
always ornate. They're very
I was just going to ask you a comment about, because all the report is based on a bigger footprint and a bigger library. But do you think that comparison is fair, given, as you mentioned in your speech, that that Hendon Library was originally the whole building? So is that a fair comparison?
No, I think you're the experts, and you are the ones that look at us. You're supposed to be, you're representing us. What do you want? What do you want from local life? We want a hub. We want a real hub, not just the word hub. We want something that we can walk in and go, wow, this is ours. It's iconic. It's Hendon. We want to be in a building that makes, and you want to go in there and you want to enjoy it. Whatever the footprint, why is there, if there's any way to reclaim even the ground floor of that building? The refurb in 2017, you can't get in there. It's like Fort Knox unless you have a card, and that's just not what a library is.
It's got no books in it.
Sorry, the services. I can't see how this is your world and you're creating it. It's just kind of lots of big, horrible, hulking buildings that are shoved in the corner of a university building. You haven't given us one single dedicated building for the community.
I would like to ask a question about your petition. In it, you state that everything but the facade will be demolished and rebuilt. That has never been part of any proposal.
May I explain why we think that?
Rubbish. Yes, it is.
You not accept that was never proposed and isn't within the proposals this evening. Do you accept that? And that is a gross
Let me-
inaccuracy.
I would like
It
to-
may have motivated people.
She said partially demolished.
Councillor
She said partially demolished. That is not correct.
I would like to explain. In your email to us, the famous fact myth email, you stated twice, you only mentioned the facade, and in the bump from the SPD originally, it only mentioned the facade. It was odd wording, so therefore conclusions were made that why is it the facade, and none of the rest of the building is mentioned. That is the peeniest bit of that petition. Okay, fair enough. So if you're not going to demolish it, then great. But that's not really the point of that. That petition is can we keep our library building, please, and not be moved into the ground floor of the student accommodation block.
And on that point, thank you, because you brought me very neatly to the next point. So since this petition was signed, and since the proposals were made, there have been significant revisions.
Not true.
Listen to you very calmly and quietly, and I would appreciate the same respect, please.
If you tell me the truth, I will
And,
accept
right,
it.
The proposals have changed, and the library will be in the bottom of a 7-storey building with student accommodation, but it is now proposed that affordable accommodation for your neighbours who may not be able to afford their own, other residents within the borough who may not be able to afford to live there, affordable accommodation.
Show us
The proposals have now changed since your petition.
I don't accept anything that anybody says because we have now got SPD, local plan, Hendon Harp. There are all conflicting things. We don't know what the heck to do because you have over consultation done. We have they all say different things. One says 1,400 students, one says 600 students, and also it's a half, but we don't know. You've said this before in plans, and you've said it's going to be affordable housing, and then it isn't affordable. Affordable housing diminishes to a teeny bit. We can't trust you anymore. Yeah. I accept that's what you've written.
We need councillors for the community, not community vandals.
Thank you for your contribution this evening. So before we go to the next item on the agenda, the proposed Hendon Hub redevelopment full business case, I think Councillor Fluss, and you'd like to address the committee. This would be an opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just raising a few points on the officer's recommendations. Point 2. I'm concerned about Barnet Council giving a guarantee for Middlesex Hub. Why should Barnet Council do this? If this is put to the market and no private funding feels secure with Middlesex Covenant, then there is a good case to say that we should not be covering it. Point 5. Our residents would like a purpose-built 1920s library to stay and to continue to be the leading library of Barnet and Hendon. That was the overwhelming message from the email feedback. They see no reason for taxpayers to fund the building for a new library across the street. Furthermore, in the library survey options, there was no category where residents could state a preference for the library to stay put. There is a huge cost involved in building a new library as well as building a new school service library at an entirely new location at the Printing Club. This is all totally unnecessary. Point 6. I welcome the change on the borough's car park, but residents are still concerned that not all parking spaces have been provided for. Indeed, the Prince of Wales car parks have not been provided for. It is also difficult to see how they are able to re-provision the full car park. Point 1.57 of your report, you mentioned that students in Middlesex University accommodation will have to agree not to go past the parking. However, the main issue up to now is students and staff within London bring their cars and parking all over the place. What arrangements can be made to prevent that? Point 16. I would like this to come to the Community Leadership and Libraries Committee so the full committee can decide. In summary, We are in a major turning point in education, and the future of learning seems to be very much hybrid, online and in person. Residents are concerned that the project is for the benefit of Middlesex University and not for him. Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State of Housing, Communities and Local Government, said only today that communities should be in the driving seat to build places that stand the test of time in every sense. I'm also concerned that the actual cost may far exceed current estimates. We have seen the price of HS2 shoot up from 37 billion to 150 billion. How can we ensure similar overturns do not happen here? If such a hike in cost were to occur, who pays the difference? Let us not rush into this. Let us instead wait for the dust to settle after COVID and see what regeneration we actually need.
Councillor, thank you for that. I think most, if not all, of your points will be answered in the presentation that will follow on the proposals. And we also have James Kennedy here from Middlesex University, who will talk a little bit, I suspect, about why you say about the future of learning and what have you. I have no doubt they will be entering into a long-term agreement if they didn't feel that they had the student numbers in the forecast students to warrant it. So I think we will hear from him later on. So I do think we'll leave that to be answered then. Councillor Mitchell, you had your hand up first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor, first, thank you for speaking. I agree with much of what you're saying, the questions that you asked. I'm sorry that you appear to pay the political price for having a backbone. Are your views in opposition to this scheme shared by both of your ward colleagues?
I think they're shared with one and not the other.
Right. And were you to vote on this scheme, were it to come before you for a vote, I know you're not a member of this committee, would you be voting against the scheme?
I'll be doing what I'll be doing the Conservative.
You'll be voting the Conservative?
I would I'll
Okay.
Councillor Plus, thank you very much. If there was a party whip on this subject, Councillor Plus would not be able to speak against the policy and against the proposal. So I think that is evidence that there is not a party whip.
The Chair just said she would vote the party whip.
Well, there is no whip on this item.
Well, that is good. Good.
Councillor was just voting against the proposal of the administration, and she remains in the Conservative group. Therefore, there is no issue for us. So it's not an issue.
But isn't it traditional for the group to not suspend people from the group?
No, Councillor, you're going off on tangents. I'm telling you right now, I have chairman of the group and other members of the group who will also confirm there is not a whip on tonight's vote amongst our members. Okay. Right. So we now need to move on. Councillor, this from the side, this slide from the side is just. Let's get on with the business, please. I'm just a bit childish, I have to say.
Don't be rude! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Right. Okay. Chris Smith, Head of States, will now present the proposals to us. And as we afforded those speakers some respect and pride, I would like please for us to do so for Chris Smith, who will then be followed
What
by...
respect are you showing to the residents?
Who will then be followed by James Kennedy from...
Why does this committee even want to pass this motion?
And if people think they can try and bully democracy by screaming at us, that will not happen.
Show us some democracy, we'll see.
Thank you. For those of you who may not have met me, I'm Chris Smith, I'm Assistant Director of I'm co-sponsor of Hendon scheme of Student North. And the object of doing a short presentation on Hendon Club this evening is simply to draw out the points from the business case so that we can field any questions that you may have. case itself. The presentation is essentially based around screenshots from the business case itself. There are page references at the top of each slide, so that you can find those relevant pages within what documents you have in front of you, if that's helpful. So, first of all, I'd just like to run through the proposed master plan itself and the area that it covers. Clearly, we are here in the town hall, as you can see. The first area of consideration is building 9 to the rear of the Hendon Library itself, which is just a single-storey building out the side here. Over the road, the development would include a development over the existing town hall car park, and the northern area beyond that, with the Ravensfield and Fenella buildings in somewhat dilapidated condition, serving on there. Moving up the road around the boroughs to Church Road and Church End, the plot on the corner, part of the Prince of Wales Close, is earmarked for development, as is the Meritage Centre, a significant retail part of the locality. The area directly behind that is currently occupied by the PDSA, the Animal Hospital. That's also earmarked to potentially move to the final plot here on the Fuller Street car park, and those car parking spaces that will be lost as a result of that build will be re-provided directly adjacent to Fuller Street, in fact, as part of the improvements to the general public realm within that area. So just to take you through some of the benefits that we believe we've identified could potentially be realised by the scheme. As I mentioned, there'd be significant public realm improvements, better pavements along the Ravensfield and areas, more CCTV and lighting, access to the paddock on the corner of Church End and Church Road, tidier green space across the whole of the locality, and additional access not only to the Middlesex University facilities that are currently available, but also, as we mentioned actually, the first floor of the library building, which has been something that came to us in consultation and something that residents were very keen to gain access to once again. Issues with student behaviour will also be addressed. The Middlesex University themselves will elaborate on that, I'm sure, when they have a chance to speak. But there is a clear commitment from them to work to improve all aspects of student behaviour in and around the boroughs. The mental parking spaces that will be lost from the town hall car park will be re-provided within the campus area and will be earmarked specifically and dedicated for members and will be secured. And we'll clearly negotiate a way in which we can locate them as close as possible to the town hall to take into account those members that may have mobility issues and need to be within close proximity to the town hall itself. The scheme now also includes some 28 affordable homes suitable for key workers and some 33 homes for independent living for young people. And I'll come on to that, how that's been introduced into the scheme in a moment. The PDSA will retain the locality, as I pointed out, with no net loss of parking for residents. And there will be new improved retail units as part of the scheme and vastly improved community facilities and modern future-proof library. Further benefits are that we can take the opportunity to relocate the school's library resource service to a new fit-for-purpose facility in the old Queen's Club in Mains Lane, in Barnet. And we can also make significant improvements to the locality as a whole, clearly in terms of placemaking, replacing the tiled structures in Ravensfield and Fenella with modern, much more sustainable, environmentally friendly buildings. Clearly the scheme will provide better placed student accommodation for Middlesex University, with an associated increase in employment opportunities for local people as a result of that new accommodation. There are significant annual revenue returns from the affordable units, the retail units and independent living units for the council, which will assist in the council balancing its budget and potentially allow further investment into frontline services. So on then to consultation. So consultation has been extremely well attended by local residents and other members of the public. And this has been hugely valuable in helping us and the wider team to adjust the proposals that were presented in the outline business case to those that are in the full business case this evening. Between that OBC approval and today, there was a 14-week consultation period. It was paused during the pre-election period, in so much as we couldn't respond to residents' feedback, but that feedback was still open and received. In total, there were 8 online consultation sessions, which were extremely well attended, as I mentioned, and there were 4 face-to-face sessions once we had the opportunity to do so when the COVID restrictions started to rise. We've also held a number of internal councillor briefings, as you would expect, in order to keep members up to speed with the development of the final business case and feedback from the consultation. In addition, as again has been mentioned, there's been a separate programme of library customer engagement which has taken place, primarily to inform the internal design of the proposed new library. Details of all the feedback is included in the business case for reference, and as I mentioned, the teams worked hard to take all of that into account by making, we think, substantial changes to the scheme, whilst ensuring that the risk profile of the scheme is still manageable and it's still a viable commercial proposition. So, on then to some of the proposed changes, back to all the proposed changes. As mentioned, this has all been in response to the feedback from the consultation. We proposed to remove the original proposal to move the PDSA to Bossage Lane, which you would have seen in the outline business case, and instead we've identified the Fuller Street car park as a better location, whilst ensuring all those spaces are being provided, as mentioned. We've reduced the amount of student accommodation by some 26% in order to relieve some of the perceived burden on the locality, and we've replaced that accommodation with affordable housing units and, as I mentioned, homes for independent young adults. The team has also introduced a base for the Safer Neighbourhood team next to the proposed new library, along with additional CCTV and lighting. The buildings along the Ravensfield and Canella development have also been separated and reduced in light at the rear of the Ravensfield and Canella proposed site, in order to reduce the impact on the adjacent property. The Meritage Centre development proposals have also been reduced in height, and we've now included a proposal for some health facilities in order to provide better facilities for local residents. And as I've already mentioned, there'll be improved public access to the old library building because there is particular historical and architectural interest in that building from the feedback we've received. Importantly, we removed the proposal to develop out the borough's car park entirely. That was proposed as a temporary location for the library during development, and would then become further housing development. That's been removed entirely from the scheme. And we've negotiated with Middlesex University and Green Spaces colleagues, who are not represented here tonight, to just improve green spaces and the local parks, general access to those parks and access to the green space within the university campus itself. So on then, if I may, to funding for the scheme. So, should the FBC be approved this evening, there were 2 funding options available. These we narrowed down, as you would expect, to a single recommendation in the paper. The top options that were available were to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board, as often the case of the council, so the council would fund the construction and then lease that student accommodation to Middlesex University. Alternatively, we can gain forward funding from external private investors in order to build out the scheme and then lease that student accommodation to Middlesex University for 40 years, after which time the assets revert back to Barnet Council for a nominal fee of £1. Analysis showed that the Public Works Loan Board borrowing option, while definitely attractive in some respects, it would create intolerable pressure on the general fund in the short term, and it also provides lower returns to the council overall. It therefore be discounted as an option. Borrowing from the private market funds in comparison provides greater returns, doesn't create the same short-term general fund pressures, and if structured in the right way, presents relatively lower risk to LBD. So there's options for funding the scheme through private investment are also available, and they are either an income strip deal or a private placement deal. The difference is essentially that an income strip deal is with a single funding entity, and a private placement funding comes from a consortium of private funds. Analysis by the team demonstrates that of the two, private placement provides a much better return to LBP, so this is the recommended option in the business case. When seeking private placement funding, however, there is still a choice as to whether Middlesex University take the lease with the funder and guarantee that lease and the rental payments themselves, or if LBP could potentially guarantee those payments. If LBP guarantees the payments, there are better returns potentially for the council, but this comes with significantly more risk than if Middlesex University guarantee their own payments clear. If Middlesex guarantee the lease, LBP has no liability post-practical completion of the scheme, because the commercial arrangement will then just be between the funder and Middlesex University. If LBP guarantee the lease, clearly the liability would sit with the council, and it would be dependent upon Middlesex University paying rent to the council or for us to be able to service those payments back to the fund. On both options, LBP carries a similar amount of construction risk, which will have to be managed very closely, as you'd expect, to ensure that construction costs don't balloon to any significant degree. So both using the Middlesex University covenant and LBP does clearly generate a positive return back to the general fund. So the current preference is to take the lower risk option for LBP and for Middlesex University to guarantee that lease and therefore hold the liability for rental payments. Currently, according to soft market testing, funding on the strength of the Middlesex University covenant is attractive, but at the moment it's only overseas funds that have expressed an interest. It's expected that this will change over the coming months, and formal expressions of interest are expected to come from UK funds very soon. Therefore, in order not to restrict our options too far at this stage, the FPC currently recommends that the LBP guarantee option is still investigated, but that if it was selected, robust risk mitigation is then implemented. This will include modelling for alternative use of the buildings, the use of accommodation by other universities potentially, retaining part of the receipt from the funder to cover potential rental defaults, as you'd expect, and more importantly, further detailed checks on the Middlesex University covenant to ensure that risk to council is minimised as much as possible. On then to procurement for the construction contractor. There are two options available really for the council to procure this work. We can go to open market, or we can procure via a formal framework of contractors, many of which are available. In this case, the Crown Commercial Service framework is the one that's been identified as preferential. The team's undertaken a significant market analysis in order to inform which of these routes we would select, and they found that utilising the CCS framework provides access to a significant proportion of the same contractors that would probably be were we to go to open market competition. This was based on analysis of the current workload of those contractors, their geographical location in the United Kingdom, expertise in the field, and a number of other criteria. Using the CCS framework also increases the likelihood that we will actually get competitive bids, because the bidding process for a contractor is simpler, quicker, and therefore cheaper for them to undertake. So on balance, procurement via the CCS framework is the recommended option in the FPC. So on then just to a little bit of imagery to try and bring the scheme to life. The photographs that you can see here are the front and rear views of the proposed new ground floor library within this lodging-shaped building here. Terrible over the Hendon town hall car park. The library will occupy the ground floor space. The space above, as I've explained, has now been changed to some 28 affordable units. This image here is looking from the town hall across the road. The image on the right-hand side is looking along Egerton Gardens to the rear of the new library building. And what you can see here, importantly, is that the ground floor of the Ravensfield and Fenella student accommodation has been turned into community space to provide new homes for the community services that will come out of the American Centre primarily. And that space extends all the way around the corner, up a pedestrian walkway between the library and the ground floor of the building itself, providing a real community feel for access to the forest. On then to the proposed replacement for Building 9. As I mentioned, that's a single-storey building here adjacent to the Town Hall. The building has been designed to fit neatly in between the existing Hendon Library structure, which will be untouched, and the Town Hall Annex, which you can see out the windows to the left-hand side coming into the project. The main feature that we'd like to bring to life here is the area that joins the new structure to the older structures is fully glazed in order for the old structure still to be visible through the new and not to lose or detract from the heritage value of the structures forward and rear of the new development. And this building itself will be a new business school formally accepted to operate from. The local planning authority has seen this design through a pre-application process and are broadly happy with it. Historic England have also now seen this design and have provided some feedback just today, which will also be taken into account clearly prior to making any formal planning application. And which are then to the new builds at Ravensfield and Fenella. The image on the left-hand side shows the arts and cultural industries building that would be closer to the junction of Church Road and Hendon. And this image shows that the student accommodation that's placed over the Ravensfield and Fenella site, whilst higher than the existing buildings, is still not so high as to totally dominate the space. And as mentioned earlier, there are separations between these two buildings now to improve the look and feel of the placemaking. On the right-hand side, again, I've mentioned the library building on the ground floor and the affordable units above, but again, this illustrates that the student accommodation is not so dominant as to detract from the existing heritage structures.
Rubbish.
Again, the local planning authority is supportive of this design through the pre-application process, so they are fully comfortable with what's going to be proposed. On then to the Meriton Centre site. So the Meriton Centre is, I believe, a 1970s structure, very run down. The proposal is to replace that with student accommodation, but we've now included a medical facility on the ground floor for the benefit of the residents. The structure itself has...
Can you repeat that, please?
So we've included a medical facility
Clearly not.
here where you can see my cursor in order to provide additional facilities for local residents. The Meriton Centre, the new buildings here were originally slightly higher than this. We now reduced the height of those buildings in order to ensure that the church itself, which is out of the front here, doesn't lose
the Heritage Centre is 1 to 2 stories high. That's
and again, the local planning authority has seen this design through the pre-application process and are broadly happy with it. And this is another one that Historic England have also seen most recently. They provided feedback today, as they did on Building 9, and so their feedback will now be taken into account before the planning application is presented.
Sabotage.
If everybody's against it, how did the plans get to this stage?
It's simply not true.
Who's been doing all the planning work when everybody's against it?
Yeah, you have 1,000 people against it.
So I think we should allow the officer to carry on with the presentation. Common courtesy, please. If there are any questions following tonight, you're more than welcome to email us and we can pass these on.
Shame on you!
Failure of democracy!
Thank you very much. Councillor Mitchell, can we carry on with the presentation? Resign. Questions from councillors and just on. Let's please get through this. Thank you.
Thank you. So this final image here is a representation of the way that we believe the PDA and the hospital would look on the Fuller Street car park site. As mentioned, all of the parking spaces that we lost as a result of that development will be re-provided in the area I showed on the first slide, adjacent to Fuller Street itself. So finally, the recommendations that are included in the business case itself are to accept these proposed changes to the scheme, to approve the principle of private finance with a preference for the MU covenant. If we can do that, we can choose. we're seeking approval of procurement and construction contracted by our TCS framework, and to approve the creation of an SPV which would provide the most tax efficient way to structure these transactions according to specialist advice that we received. Clearly, these aren't all the recommendations that you will see in the papers that come forward. We did into the ones from the business case itself. So there are further recommendations in the public papers in your consideration also. That's all I have.
Great, Chris, thank you for that. Now, at this juncture, we could go with some questions for Chris right now. But I wonder whether this is a good opportunity to invite James Hendon from Middlesex University to also speak. And then perhaps if James would be kind enough to stay for some questions, and we have the questions all at one go, rather than having presentation questions. But I gather, James, it's only a few minutes, your contribution.
4 minutes.
4 or 5 minutes, that's fine. So if members could just hold on for a few minutes longer, I think that would be a good show. So James, welcome.
Thank you, councillors, residents. I think many of you know me. My name is James Kennedy. I'm the Deputy CEO from Middlesex University. Our Vice-Chancellor Nick can't be here tonight, but I'm the Senior Responsible Officer, the SRO, of this project for the university. I wanted to cover 3 areas. I wanted to start by just setting out some parts of our community impact. I think it's really important. We are, as a university, we are committed to being a good neighbour. We understand that we have an impact on the area, and we aim to make sure that this is positive.
We have your photo yet?
I am very sorry. I'm going to hear again, and I can't hear if questions come from behind or in front.
No, please carry on. And I would ask in the public gallery, if you can just allow James to finish, and I'm sure councillors will be asking questions shortly.
Sorry. Thank you. So, prior to COVID, we hosted all sorts of events, from large community events, borough-wide events hosted in the college building, to small community groups that need space that we host across the campus. We host faith-based groups and festivals such as Diwali, Nowruz, which is the Persian festival of New Year, Hanukkah, and our Christmas lights in local primary schools. And we manage events ourselves, STEM festivals and the North London Story Festival. During COVID, we've hosted the local testing centre, 2 local charities organised for food distribution. We've manufactured tens of thousands of visors and sets of PPI. We've trained thousands of volunteers to give vaccinations. We provided free key worker accommodation and accommodation for people at risk during the first lockdown. And we supported our own students and students from other independent higher education institutions with their testing. We're proud of the impact that our students have on our community. As students, they volunteer to support local charities, community groups and faith groups, after studies they go on to nurses, midwives, accountants, IT professionals, artists, musicians and more. We contribute hundreds of millions of pounds to the local economy directly, and in addition, indirectly, through the knock-on impact that our staff and students have. We are committed to supporting our community in large ways and small. Our residents forum is a place to consider suggestions for support, as recently have some local groups access our Wi-Fi in order for them to provide better service. Talk a little bit about consultation. We worked alongside colleagues at the London Borough of Cardiff, and we have tried to listen to the feedback and ideas coming from the community, and we believe we've adapted to many of them. As a result, from the university, to speak on our behalf, we are committed to making the paddock more accessible to the local community. We understand the importance that the community places on the library building, and we are committing to ensure that it remains a vibrant community asset. And we have supported Barnet, as London Borough of Barnet, as colleagues have adapted the proposal significantly in the library. During the consultation, the residents raised 2 particular issues I would like to briefly address. The first is antisocial behaviour and drugs. I would like to note that antisocial behaviour is no worse in the boroughs than it is in the rest of the country, and It is also worth remembering that not all of our students are young people, and not all young people are our students. However, we have set out to listen, and with residents we've identified two areas locally, St Joseph's Grove and the area behind the Meritage Centre, where we appreciate that there are challenges. We can't address these alone, and so we're working with London Borough Barnet and the Metropolitan Police on a number of ideas, including improved lighting and sightlines, joint patrols, and other ideas to mitigate the impact, as well as a renewed social compact with our students. The other one I'd like to touch on is parking. We're looking at ways to maximise the use of our existing car parks to therefore minimise the impact on the area around through the use of number plate recognition system, which will help ensure that the car park is used to maximum effect. This system will also help us provide bookable spaces for those using the town hall when needed. We will also support London Borough Barnet and local residents with enforcement issues around the controlled parking zone. We'll set out clearly our expectation that students do not bring a car to university. It simply isn't necessary. And we will ensure that those students who are in Knowles residents do not have access to the controlled parking zone. We have a 24-hour number that goes directly to our security office, which has been in place for many years, but we've taken steps to remind the public that it exists through the leaflet system. I'd like to just finish by a little statement on what this project means for us. This is a very significant project for us. We're not setting out to increase our student numbers, but we are seeking to significantly enhance the quality of teaching, of research, and student experience. The future of learning is blended, but effective learning still requires modern facilities that allow students to engage and practice with what they're going to learn. And this is what we're setting out to accomplish. Our community matters to us, and we wish to play a part in ensuring that Barnet and Hendon remain vibrant and successful communities. And this proposal for us as a university ensures that we open our boundaries more to the community with many more shared spaces so that we can truly become integrated.
James, thank you very much. So you have two substantial presentation and a statement from Middlesex. I've noted your request to speak, Councillor Mitchell. Just give it a second. I'd just like to emphasise there have been significant changes and revisions to the initial proposals that you've seen this evening. In direct response to the consultation responses. Middlesex University is an asset to this borough. It really is. And thank you, James, for all the community work, your students, your staff, all that you can contribute to the borough. And I know there's other things you do as well that you've not mentioned. And we'd like to thank you for that. And you're not going away. Middlesex University is not going away. You've consolidated from Ashford Park and Enfield, and you are there. And for as long as that is the case, there will be a demand for student housing. And we can either, as a borough, do nothing and see more HMO houses, family accommodation turned into HMOs. And Hendon has the highest number of HMO applications within the borough. So we need to
said that was the alternative? This is just nonsense. There are options. There are ways of making this work.
We can help provide purpose-built accommodation in the right places and stop that conversion. So it's that. If you look across the road at Ravensfield building, it needs replacing. Okay. If you look at the Meritage Centre, it's not best design, and we have community organisations, including the DSA, and health and police. They will be in new modern accommodation as well. The new library.
Stop this marketing speech!
The new library will have more footprints than the current public accessible library.
Shut up! You've got nothing to say, you've got nothing to add. You've got nothing to add, it's already already?
I now offer Councillor Mitchell, you've had your hand up first, and then we have Councillor Schneiderman and Councillor Rosenberg. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members of the committee will know I went to school down the road at the old St. so Hendon is an area I'm particularly fond of. Members of this committee will certainly know because I've droned on about it, and I love the history. Much of that was developed in the local area. There was so much heritage and a long sense of community going back centuries. If I could start my questioning regarding the archives that are based in the library at the moment. I understand that there's been some confusion about where they're going. Could you just clarify what the plan is for that as we speak?
Either Susie or Chris.
Callum and I will services here if you want to find some more detail on the library. But the archives will be in an upgraded facility.
It's going to drive.
No, that's the school library. That's the school library service. So that's a school-facing service, not a public service.
But you are relocating the archives.
Yeah, all the library facilities will be relocated.
So, firstly, can I request from officers to be provided after the meeting, can we have the cost of the recent move from one level of the library to the other of the archives? Can we have a breakdown of the costs of what the cost of what the new archival work will be? Has consultation happened with staff, both at the archive and the library?
As I understand it, not yet, but it will be approved at this stage, and full quality assessment has been undertaken and will continue to be undertaken.
I would have thought it would have been quite important to talk to the staff about how to manage the services.
The head of the libraries is supportive of this proposal, and as explained, certainly to readings that I've asked for, the benefits that the new footprint will give the library service.
But managers are not the workers.
No, but they do care deeply about the service and understand it extremely well.
Okay, I've got 7 questions. So
this one, it's quite a few answers, Councillor Mitchell.
It's been brought to my attention that there are a number of organisations who are mentioned in this report who are having to move in interim measures and will have new homes. It seems they've all agreed, but are they actually happy with these changes, or have they just agreed to them and are still unhappy, or don't find some of the interim arrangements are adequate? I'm really more record answer to that.
So we've been in constant discussion with the community organisations, and we are slowly agreeing terms with them. And as far as we're aware, they are comfortable with the arrangement, which will be of a similar size, the same size to what we want at the moment.
But being comfortable with new arrangements and not being happy with them, so I think we can go what we want from that. Regarding historic incomes, did the council proactively consult historic incomes?
Yes,
We did. So it wasn't a resident that informed them what was going on.
Can you prove it?
We can.
yes.
Then please prove it.
Okay, and do you now have their responses?
What did you like?
When did you receive the responses, and when were they circulated to councils?
So as part of a planning process, it's entirely up to consult with bodies such as Historic England at the appropriate time. And the appropriate time was when we felt that the proposals were advanced enough to be able to have a meaningful discussion with them. So we've been having discussions with them over the last month, and we received their written feedback this morning actually.
So, I mean, you've already worked out the images I'm sure that wasn't just rustled up in the last month. You know, these plans have been around for a while. Why haven't you only consulted Historic England in the last month?
Conversation with Historic England. So if we go in too early, we have to go back again and say, well, actually, we've listened to the consultation.
Not true. Not true. They wrote you on the 22nd of February.
The planning application is yet to be drawn up, and now that response will feed into the...
You've got the detailed plan.
Next question, please.
We have the document.
Lies.
What our chair is that we are some way down the road with all of this. Planning application, no planning application. You know, as I said, this is the civic heart of the borough.
Yes.
Literally within weeks of it coming to committees when we decide we're going to talk to Historic England, that's nonsense, Chair.
Can the students speak? We have a student here who wants to speak.
2 students.
Can they speak?
No, I'm afraid the public participation section is over. There is a procedure that all the speakers today...
But they
I'm sorry, I can't...
They know what life in
It's now all the councillors who are elected to now have the...
There's no Hendon councillors here. There's no Hendon councillors here.
What money does the university pay to the councillors to push this through? That's more important.
Will the Hendon councillor please stand? Will the Hendon councillor please stand?
Councillors, stand down.
Stand, councillor.
How many members of the public? We live in a civilised country where elected representatives...
Don't lie!
You are lying to
I'm sorry, we have councillors.
No, we're shutting you down.
We've been elected to make a decision
to lie to us. You are abusing your power. This is great.
Then why are you having a consultation with the public?
Yes, you've ignored us.
You already decided you've already done justice. Why are you bothering?
to go straight to the vote without a debate, I'm afraid.
You will not pay council tax.
I mean, yeah, I think it does demonstrate the community feeling here. And although
there's 100 people outside,
the scheme being promoted as having benefits to residents, it doesn't seem that they realise
there are none.
There are no benefits. We're not stupid, we do realise. All for students.
A couple of questions on the consultation to start with. I mean, it's quite clear, 90% of people didn't agree, but why wasn't there in the consultation an option to keep the library in the current location and upgrade it? And access to it as a library. What they want is access as a library, not just as a building, or to have a look at the staircase. And with regards to Historic England, surely if they've now fed back, we should be able to see that now and be able to see that. I've got a couple of other questions after that.
Just to update, we're going to ask for the head of libraries to come and address us about why she feels that a new building will be able to offer a better experience than the existing one. On publishing, we are very happy to share the advice that was only received this morning from Historic England. And then when the planning application comes to and is published,
we need it now.
We can show you.
Now,
we need the advice now.
Okay. Before the vote.
You spent our money on plans that you didn't consult Historic England
At this
on.
point, can we ask the head of libraries to answer that question? Is that okay? Thank you. So the question was, why a new building would be better than trying to reconfigure the old building, and how, what you feel that my observation to that is how you feel the new building will enhance the old. Thank you.
So I think it's a combination of things, really. So it's the size of the footprint that we occupy in space currently, which does constrain what we're able to do. And we have an opportunity here to have a bigger space, which gives
It's
us
not
bigger
had a
space.
big
It's not a big space
university, which we didn't need.
The other factor, and probably as significant, is about the flexibility of the space. So the current building has some quite fixed points that are quite inflexible, which mean that you lose quite a lot of the footprint. So, for example, the stairway, which is obviously one of the factors that is architecturally striking and is very attractive, and I absolutely recognise that. But its situation at the front of the building and its size means that it can bisect the library as you go into the building and takes up and occupies quite a large footprint, which means that we lose quite a lot of usable space. It then means
Space we're not using as a library.
Take away the university from there and you have space.
We're quite constrained in what we can do because the layout and the construction of the space is quite fixed. The other factor that's quite important is, again, one of the aspects that's actually part of the attractive nature of the building is the facade. So libraries, like retail, they benefit from having open frontages through which you can showcase the kind of services that you put on inside.
We're not still drunk.
It's a very important part of being able to
You definitely get attracted to introduce accommodation.
attract into the building people who don't necessarily know about the library offer.
Everyone knows about the library.
There is an organisation called Opening the Book, who are a well-renowned library redevelopment organisation, and they talk about the fact that our impression of a building, about 80% of our impression of the service in the building, happens from what we can see immediately. And for them,
Scraping the barrel.
At the moment, the building is very architecturally striking, so you can't see any of the services, and you have to actually come into the library quite far before you do that. It's estimated that the average library visit is something between 5 and 9 minutes. So you don't have very long to attract people into the building.
You never stop my kids.
Will demonstrate is there.
That's the most ridiculous excuse I've ever heard.
Scraping the barrel ladder, isn't it the case that the more what attracts people to libraries is the availability of qualified staff, the opening hours, and the amount of books and other resources that are in there, and because they've been cut, that less people have been visiting the library. There are other ways of attracting people to the library. It's still, is it not? I don't know. There are lots of historic buildings that have been sympathetically restored and able to give them a modern day use. I totally agree. You don't want it there as a monument, you want it there as it needs to function in the current day and age. But isn't it the case that with the right advice, it would be possible to both keep that historic building and make it a modern, attractive library?
It's absolutely true to say that libraries operate out of all sorts of different buildings, all sorts of different ages, all sorts of different sizes, all sorts of different types. We're not saying that libraries per se can't operate and function from old buildings. What we're saying is that this particular building offers some particularly difficult constraints which you can't do huge amounts about.
I just had a...
Very full answer there, Councillor Schneider. The next question, sorry, we've answered both of them now, sorry.
I just had a question away from libraries about a finance-related question.
Okay.
In relation to the guarantee, the possibility of offering a London Borough Fire guarantee, which is made subject to risk mitigation, I wondered if we could just hear a bit more about that. One of the quoted mitigations was the possibility of other universities coming in. I just wondered, how realistic is that? Can you tell us a bit more about that risk mitigation?
Yes, so there will be a lot of, if that was an option, a lot of risk mitigation would be studied at the time. So, as you say, an example of that is that another university would take it. And there's actually a lot of university a lot of requirements from other London universities for accommodation blocks. So there is potential that's
in central London only.
Other risk mitigation is alternative leases over all the accommodation, and there has been some modelling done on that already, and that will be done in more detail. Other things like obviously more substantial checks and balances on the Middlesex Covenant, and also potentially holding back some monies from any premiums paid to the council to allow for some kind of shortage of rent in the future.
I'll just stress those are contingencies and risk mitigations. They're not something that's part of the upfront plan. We're talking about the absolute disaster. If Middlesex did go, and we've got the reassurance that they're not to be made. But if something happens, then we've got these buildings, as we've got lots of buildings across the borough with tenants, and if those tenants disappear for some reason, then we need to think, well, what would we do with the building? That's all this is not.
But they're loss making right
any
now.
part of the original plan.
Just take place.
In terms of the risk, is there another risk the amount of huge projects that the council is taking on and the capacity to manage, break grass and so alongside another big project involving private sector finance? Is that not adding to the risk and making this far riskier prospect than might otherwise be the case?
We do have the capacity to manage this. We have the resource. We are extremely experienced in managing these kinds of regeneration.
You're experienced in society.
You're an ambitious council, okay? If you didn't take this, you wouldn't do anything, you wouldn't improve anything. And we are an ambitious council.
Ambitious for whom? Not the community. What is your mission?
It is corruption to be told the financial information which must be disclosed.
Manage the whole portfolio. We do have to review the portfolio as well as the individual projects.
Speak
We
up.
are acting in the cost of making sure we've got the right to deliver.
You can't hear.
Alongside all the others. So yes, I'm talking we either have to bring in resource and we are looking at the management of the whole portfolio of projects, both from a capacity point of view and the work for the finance business.
This could be financially
Thank you. Councillor Rosenberg.
I'm going to follow on those points about the financing and then maybe ask about transport and messaging. On the finance, so there are the two different options and I'm out in this case. Under the sort of central scenario where Middlesex gives you a 40-year guarantee of rent technically, presumably Middlesex will then have the option to make whatever uses to the buildings within planning restrictions it chooses to do. So if we were to choose to have more students over the next 40 years or have more living remotely or for whatever purposes, it would then, under your outline business case, I imagine, be able to sublet the properties in other ways to non-students.
So, the leases governing Middlesex University's lease, use of properties.
Speak up.
As I said, it's a very novel leases, have all the checks and balances in. So it has a use clause in there, which will govern And similarly, for assignment and subletting, they would have to comply with the use of law and they would have to comply with the assignment and subletting clauses of the lease. So there are, we think, significant checks and balances on the use of those buildings.
Sure. It's not so much checks and balances as it's what you contractually agree. And so is it your intention to contractually agree that they will give you those payments come what may, and that they will only fill those buildings with students come what may? Because that is a worse deal from Middlesex's point of view. I think it's right to say that if they have more flexibility over the life of the lease. And that therefore, you know, I would imagine the more financially effective option for the council to choose if going down the Middlesex route would be to allow Middlesex maximum flexibility were it to not be able to fit it into students.
Well, I can't speak for the university, but they've told us all along this is wholly intended for students, and the lease governs that use.
Okay, all right. So it's your intention to try that moment, your intention to try to deal with Middlesex, that they would guarantee 40 years the income and that they would not be able to put on students into the properties. And what if Barnet was to choose the alternative route and be directly let out properties with it? Would it be able to provide any such guarantee to the public, as it were?
So we're obviously talking a scenario that is very remote at present.
Not true.
And in that circumstance, we would be in consultation frequently with the fund, who would be funding this, who would effectively be the landlord, about the future of this and what both the landlord and ourselves would be wanting out of the scenario that may occur, as I say, which is a very remote possibility. So I can't speak for what's going to happen in the future or that particular remote possibility, but what definitely would happen would be that the fund and ourselves would be in consultation as to the use of this building.
Yeah. It seems to me that it's not entirely watertight, but it's definitely student accommodation for the life of the 40 years. Under that situation, I mean, it seems rather likely that financial pressures would lead to this particular situation.
I think in that scenario that I can't speak for anybody, so I'm speaking from the project point of view, that there would be a preference not to have empty buildings on the boroughs. So in that scenario, I think that if you're choosing empty buildings and derelict buildings over alternative uses, you go for alternative uses.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to transport, maybe.
Sorry, can I just say, Middlesex is if at any time students get the option, would they rather be 10 minutes walk from, or 5 minutes walk from Middlesex University, or would they rather get a bus from Wembley Way? The chances are it's Wembley Way that's going to end up being filled with their students rather than the other way around.
I think I agree with you. That also depends on the relative Middlesex University chooses to charge for students, right? We don't have control of that. Moving on to transport. A question, Mr. Kennedy. You said that you discourage your students from ever using a car or private university. How do you expect them, how do you generally encourage them to get around the borough? It's most interesting.
So, most of them, many do, unlike Tube to Hendon Central and walk up. If you take the bus, I'm sorry, I may be missing the point of the question, but people take the bus up from Commondale, they walk to Bill Hill.
Do any of them have anything cycling around the borough at all?
So we do. We have staff and students who cycle. We have a scheme which actually is run by a student union, which allows students to borrow bicycles. And one of our COVID responses has been to increase the amount of cycle parking we offer to make that easier.
So would you share my disappointment that there's no reference to cycling infrastructure in any of the documents that we have in front of us tonight? There's no investments.
Sorry. I'm not sure I would share your disappointment. I'm not sure this is the time for that in the process, but I have to be led by Barnet and the project. We do believe recycling, we have...
Why lead? Thank you, Kennedy. I think just one message finally, and just say to the council that, Professor Forward, that this goes ahead. This will be perhaps his legacy to the borough, the construction that will go ahead here. And I just think it's a shame that he doesn't choose to lead from the front with this one. I don't see him actively out there selling this project, which he seems to believe in. He makes it seem like it's just sort of emerged from the council process. I feel like very disappointed that the main argument that he said brought to the committee tonight was to sort of threaten them by saying that if this doesn't get approved, then there'll be a lot more HMOs in Hendon.
Yeah, that's not true.
I have led on this, Councillor Rosenberg, and I've led my group to discuss this in depth initially. And we, as a council, this is not about one person, this is about a community and about...
You are not the community.
And if you wonder why councillors don't go to groups of residents, some groups of residents, then we have to perhaps look at some of the examples of behaviour today where they are screamed and shouted down.
Because it's our lives. This is our future. This is our
very well responded public consultation, and when we come to the planning stage, this in the detail, of course, I will as will my colleagues. Yes, this is a very sensitive, as I appreciate, very sensitive
Stop patronizing us.
proposal, and we have to do this in the right way. And I don't think one person pushing this was the right way. I think we need to do this in the way that we have. And I'm extremely proud of and how we responded and how we adapted. The proposal before us.
I will finish by just saying that all of us councillors have received an extraordinarily negative response from local residents to this. I've heard very little in the way of positive messaging from yourself or the rest of the Conservative group. 2 out of 3 of the ward councillors oppose this scheme. One of them has come here to say to her opposition, and it's no coincidence that she's just been deselected. I feel that you have lost control of the narrative on this one.
Once we have a scheme agreed, so we now, after tonight, provided the committee votes this, we will have a scheme agreed that we will be promoting, and we will also be correcting some of the, quite frankly, misrepresentations of Brightwood. For instance, it's never been our intention to not deny repayment.
That's because we think.
Yet people have been...
She said partial demolition. She said partial demolition.
People have willingly misrepresented the proposals, and if we agree this is...
Let's talk about
Shame on you.
There's another element to it that none of the councillors here tonight would have taken into consideration. To do with the Cocktail and the Saracen's ground. And that's all partly linked up together.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure that Sharon Ryan mentioned it before regarding Prince of Wales close and parking ground for I've worked with Mr. Ryan and Council Bush on this in regards to the parking pressures there. Have officers taken into account the proposals regarding the CPZ and the parking places which need to be re-provided in Prince of Wales close and the parking, the existing parking pressures are already sitting on the Prince of Wales close?
Yes, so obviously the CPZ is on trial at the moment on that, and we're supporting, well, the project team has been working with the parking officers in the council on that particular proposal. We recognise that we don't want to get less loss of parking for exactly the reason you said. So that's why all the spaces are being re-provided.
Councillor Bullis, you had your hand up. Are there any comments from your side? Any comments or questions? Councillor Rogers? Councillor Bullis, it will come to Councillor Rogers.
Thank you. You can't get to the core of it. You're quite right when you said that there needs to be some progress and that project will always carry the risk. Don't disagree with that. But when I look at this, I would say, well, if there's a couple of this, that's an acceptable risk portfolio. But you get, if there's a private funder that supports the university, if we have a joint vehicle but it doesn't work, we have to do this. So there's lots of options here. I'm sure of the future of higher education, but nobody's got a crystal ball, but it's something you've got to take into account. If construction costs go up by more than we enter, and given the problems already seen in the construction industry, that's very likely. But also there have been, and as Councillor Rosenberg said, we've all been getting emails, there are questions that involve the Information Commissioner, possible legal challenge and various other groups about the process. Don't know what can happen with that, but there are more risks. If there are any delays, what that actually costs. If it's delayed by a couple of months and you miss the start of term, that affects the whole finance structure from the university point of view. I think, especially given the uncertainty around some of the legal information questions, it would be wrong to make a decision tonight without getting some advice. What I would suggest is that this be deferred to the next meeting or to the council meeting, refer it up to the full council so all councils know the same. But before then, council's advice is short on this request. I'm very unhappy with having to vote for or against something where we're not 100% sure of the legal status. So I'm moving that as a recommendation that this is either deferred or moved up to council, and I ask for this vote to be recorded. Seconded.
You can only propose one or the other or both. You can have a vote on deferral and then referral. But
you have a vote on both.
We've not come to the end of the debate. I think that will be appropriate once we've had all members who wish to speak. Councillor Raj, would you like to make your contribution?
Indeed, Mr. Chairman, it's not a question as such, but just for the sake of formality, with governance and monitoring officer assisting. I am in fact a trustee of a charity, the Midland Annual Home. It's a council appointment. It's in the locality. It's not linked to Middlesex University in any way. It's not a paid appointment, but it's probably sensible just to declare it in any event, just for transparency. But I understand from governments that I can, of course, remain in the and it's just sort of the governments and
Thank you. It's not completely always fictitious address, I would think. That's noted and it is correct to raise that. Thank you. Councillor Hendon.
I've been thinking about what Councillor Rawlings said in the context of decision making on major projects. And one of the problems about major projects is that they are scary. They just are. Because when you sit at the front end, there are multiple hurdles that you have to cross in order to get to the end. And the analogy that I have is a bit like a surgeon opening somebody up in the hope that they believe that at the end of time they're going to be able to put them back together again. Our team have to believe that if they start this process, they can get to the end. And the thing which stops them getting to the end is when you get to a decision point, people being scared, and I think that is the right word, of advancing across a hurdle. Because yes, we receive multiple letters from people in this room, We've been taken to international tribunals. We've been taken to the Information Commissioner. And all of those people will no doubt in due course come to conclusions as to whether we did things exactly right, and if we can do things exactly right, no doubt will be told what to do. But none of that has anything to do with the central point. And the central point is that regeneration processes have to go through a series of steps. And this is a really important step tonight, which we're being asked to decide on. And all the points that have been raised, perfectly legitimate, perfectly understandable that the people who live in the local area do not like the proposal. Very clear from the consultation, all laid out. We have made major changes to the scheme to mitigate those items that we can. We have recognised in the scheme that we haven't satisfied the people in this room, and we're never going to be able to satisfy them.
Nonsense.
Not community. But start
telling. Why don't you listen to us?
Is to move this scheme across one critical hurdle of the business case, so that we can proceed to the next stage. And many of the issues that have been raised tonight will have to be addressed in the planning application, which will have to deal with even questions. The move of the library will have to deal with all the issues associated with moving libraries. We will have to provide all the detail associated with parking. But let us be clear, this is a major piece of work.
What are you saying?
Initiative of the council, which the council is entitled to take a view on. And that view is being taken tonight explicitly in the recognition and understanding that a number of the people who live locally do not like the scheme. That is very clear and an entirely legitimate view of those local people. But all of the responsibility, and one of the letters that we have received today was from a resident who said, you as a local councillor are responsible for your ward residents. I think not fully understanding that none of the councillors who are being asked to vote tonight from either party are actually Hendon residents. And therefore, we have a responsibility, not just to the people in this room, we have a responsibility to Barnet. We are Barnet councillors, and the judgment of the administration is that this scheme brings benefits to Barnet as a whole, and that we should advance the scheme.
Shut up! I can't, sorry, I cannot tolerate somebody increasing the chair.
That is why I will be encouraging my colleagues on the basis of the discussion tonight to vote in favour of the scheme.
You need to legitimate its flaws.
Indeed, you brought a lot of debate together.
Let's talk about Cocktail and Saracen.
As now you came in, and then we will come to the motions.
So we are Barnet residents.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to reiterate the point that James made earlier on, really. In a number of emails I've seen where it criticises students and it says things where they're not interested in the local area. I would just like to say that when I was chair of the State Communities Partnership Board, Professor Simon Hartley from criminology was on that board, and students went to help the police do intelligence work. They went to the council anti-social behaviour team and did intelligence work.
And he left 6 years ago.
I would also like to say that every year, and for 3 of the last 6 years, I've had the pleasure to launch the Middlesex Lawyers Advocacy Service, where students help other students and the local residents with legal matters. So when people say that they're not interested in the local area, that is probably untrue. They do help, they do contribute. And when you see how much has been invested in Middlesex University and the quality of the facilities, it will attract students, it will be a major university, and this will assist it in being a major
We don't need another
Students don't have to live with us. Why are the public no longer able to run a contour.
We want the campus and we want this area to be an asset to Hendon and to the borough. Absolutely, and that's why we are.
We see right through you.
We've had a motion. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions. I think we've come to a close debate there. We've had a motion. So, to Councillor Rawlings, I think the first motion was to defer tonight's decision to a future meeting.
Future meeting in order to get council's opinion on these matters, because as Councillor Deakin said, we don't know what the information commissioner or other people will decide. What if we make the vote tonight and it's decided that that vote wasn't taken properly? We've wasted millions more and created more of a delay. Let's get council's advice. You can do it at the next meeting or the next council meeting, whichever comes earlier. But if they've got to do separate votes on those, so there's two separate votes.
It's the Office for Environmental Protection. There's a new case before the Office for Environmental Protection, not just the Information Commissioner.
Alluded to. If we defer this decision a month, 2 months, 3 months, I can guarantee you now we will have another last-minute question or challenge or whatever it might be. Again, the council says, well, I want advice on that now. It needs to come a point where we need to feel, I feel fully advised, and we need to vote on the matter before us.
No, you need to have all the facts.
Flawed and you're flying blind.
You don't have all the facts yet.
We can lawfully take the decision this evening, so it's been seconded. I'd like to go to the vote now.
You have a case before the Office for Environmental Protection.
If you want to have just one vote, can we say to the next suitable meeting? Because that could be the LR
Okay, so just to clarify, let's deal with you simply asked that this comes to the next appropriate P&R meeting. That is seconded by the way. So that is seconded. Those in favour of Councillor Rawlings' motion? And those against? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So there's no other motion. We now go to the substantial, to the recommendations.
So, can we then not move to council?
So that isn't a vote. That has to be made by 3 members. That's not a traditional. Okay. Does that have to happen after the decision or before? So you would like to move, whatever we decide gets referred to the whole council. That's fine. Thank you.
Before you take the vote, can I please ask a question that's relevant to the decision you might end up taking?
Actually, before I come to these, there is an exempt paper, as has been alluded to, that contains more commercially sensitive information within this proposal. Are there any councillors who want to have any discussion in private or on the exempt paper? No? No. Okay, so we will vote on those, we won't discuss them.
The business case is unfortunately flawed, if I may say so, because Middlesex is a very poor covenant, and you're putting a lot of council money in prison.
And the auditors have been informed.
Council, that the decision will be made there instead, so that's fine. But I would still like to just show support from the committee for the recommendations. It is a decision, but it is actually indicative of this committee's support. So there are 16 recommendations. Those in favour? 7, Chairman. And those against? 5, Chairman. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's been referred to full council. We have them on Tuesday. We may be able to bring it to Tuesday at full council, where, well, I don't think we'll have any, there'll be no material change in the proposal by then. So it'll be a relatively short debate because there is other business tables for that meeting. Councillor Shine.
Will we be able to see the historically new advice?
If we can add that in something, we received that this morning. We are able to publish that. Yes, we can absolutely publish that. Councillor Rosenberg.
May I ask that the vote that we just held that was indicative could be recorded by name in the minutes, please?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, here you go. Right, perhaps we should have had that at the start and then the debate for council. But, yes. Okay, so we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the SPD. And have we got these the plans to? There have been comments that there isn't enough detailed information within this document. That is because it is a more strategic document within planning within boroughs. And as has been repeatedly said tonight, more detail on the design of the building, the uses, the conditions, that will come through any planning application that comes forward in the future. So on that note,
I'd like to start by reminding members that back in December of last year, Policy and Resources Committee approved a public consultation draft of the Boroughs and State University supplementary planning document. Public consultation on that draft was then undertaken for a statutory 6-week time frame beginning the 11th of January through to the 22nd of February. Now, turning to the SPD itself, we know that supplementary planning documents provide a development framework against which development proposals will be considered. It aims to ensure that any forthcoming proposals respond appropriately to the special sense of place which characterises this part of Hendon. Public consultation was undertaken in accordance with statutory consultation requirements. Council's own adopted the SDI, which was amended in September of 2020 to account for the revised measures of planning consultations during the pandemic. The report before you sets out in paragraph 1.13 and 1.14 consultation activities that we were engaged with. We hosted 3 public consultation sessions virtually. Consultation was first conducted through the council social media. The door-to-door flyer drop campaign was commissioned to all addresses within Hendon and West Hendon Roads. All 3 of the sessions, virtual platform sessions, attracted healthy attendance, on average about 150 attendance. Overall, the consultation we had a good response. Over 350 responses were received, combining written comments and questionnaire responses. And a summary of those are available in Appendix B in the schedule of representation. There were, as you can imagine, a number of issues and questions raised during that consultation. Many of which actually went beyond the scope of planning and purpose of the SPD. Equally, however, there were a number of comments very much relevant to planning, and these have really helped to shape and form the adoption version of the SPD. Principal changes included now. We have expanded the vision and objectives to take account of a much broader set of environmental, community and social benefits for the borough and beyond. Improving public realm, sustainable transport options and environmental quality, especially through measures like biodiversity net gain and sustainable drainage, are all principles to be set down in the SPD. Reference to prioritising well-being of existing residents and securing new and enhanced community assets have also been further emphasised, including, where possible, dual-use facilities. A strengthened emphasis on the importance of conservation, historic character and archaeology, and conserving and enhancing the heritage value of the borough is a central key component to the consideration of any future planning application. In particular, the framework now references an area of archaeological significance which comes from the goals of the SPD boundary. Further, changes have been made on the clarification on the principle that any redevelopment opportunity concerning the car park would very much need to be supported and justified through evidence. The preservation and enhancement of the public realm and green landscape has also been strengthened. We have refined the SPD boundaries to take account of property boundaries more accurately. And we have added greater detail into the description of 4 identified character areas, which would guide any new proposals appropriately. The planning framework sets out a way in which, using design and heritage watershed approach, planning can ensure that the future development and renewal opportunities should bring sustainable physical as well as community enhancements to the area. Any future applications within the boundary of the SPD will need to demonstrate how it delivers of the principles of the objectives that are set down in the SPD. And the SPD is therefore intended to provide clarity for planning officers, decision makers, developers, as well as interested stakeholders, and remains very much consistent with national policy. The SPD does not aim to set out any detailed specific development schemes, but rather provides, as intended, both broad and specific guidance for development proposals, should they come forward, and they should come forward as a comprehensive and coordinated master plan approach. For these reasons, Chairman, the report is asking the committee to bring forward and adopt the SPD as set out in the recommendations. If members could also note the addendum provided, which was submitted in addition to the committee report, which looks at also clarifying those adopted local plan policies on which the SPD supplements. Officers would recommend, therefore, that under delegated authority, the chairman and the delegated authority to the chief exec consider those further textual changes before the SPD is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this would be a document that any future application would set parameters for that. And so it's very important. Considering the item we just discussed. Councillor Mitchell, you had indicated for a question.
Thank you, Chair. I forgot to make a declaration, which I do apologise. Assembly members, Disbore and then Clark put in consultation responses to this. And obviously, I used to work for this Disbore, I do work for the Clark now. I've spoken briefly earlier on about the historical context of Hendon and how important it is to preserve that huge historic legacy. Outside of these traditions, it's probably my favourite part of the bar because of the enormous heritage and history that's in there. I have, architectural tastes are, of course, a matter of preference for everybody. My own personal tastes are on what I do, but I would just implore the council to ensure that when it does come to the planning stage, and when it does come to drawing up detailed designs for these buildings on the south side, on the other side of this road, that they really pay strong heed and attention to the kind of architecture, the special architecture that is this side of the road. And we are really lucky to have a civic centre to this borough, which includes this town hall, that library, fire station, and the university. And I pray to God that we really work as hard as possible to incorporate that kind of architectural history and legacy into whatever plan we go forward. The other point I would make is I think there's a real opportunity to try and enhance some of the green spaces in Hendon if this does go forward in the way that I'm hoping. I think that is being missed a little bit. There's a really strong green frontage on this side of the boroughs. Something like that really could and should be incorporated onto the south side. We need half of this plan really ought to advertise to the residents of Hendon where these green spaces all across campus and come up with an integrated plan to join all together, get walking routes going and things like that. So I hope to take that one, but I just feel that that's lacking a bit at the moment with the current document.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
I'm very surprised by this document. It's a supplementary planning document. In the ward that I represent, it covers part of North Finchley Town Centre. We have an SPV, and it lays down maximum heights and gives an indication of what's an acceptable appearance of buildings within the area, taking into account what is there already. And in this SPV, I expected to see something similar. And there is absolutely nothing here that places any constraints on the height of appearance of buildings that are close to the buildings on this side of the boroughs that Councillor Mitchell just listed. I would add the church and the former museum building and the almshouses. How big a building is acceptable to have close to those heritage buildings? We look in vain in this particular document. Maybe it's in another document, but that document's not before us. And we're told that we're going to get more detail when a planning application is submitted. When the planning application won't be approved by this committee before it goes in for consideration by a different committee, the Strategic Planning Committee. This committee is the one that is, I've made this point about other sites on numerous occasions, the committee that makes the decision about what kind of planning application is put forward on behalf of the council. That's an important decision, and it's all delegated, as far as I can see, to officers, and that's wrong in principle. This document is in line with what seems to be the Conservative Party planning policy, which is anything goes. But it's not to my liking. I'll be voting against, and I would hope that my colleague will do so.
So, you boil all that down to perhaps why is there less detail in this one than there is in others? Is that to do with the conservation area aspect, which will offer some greater degree of protection in itself?
So, the supplementary planning document, behind the SPDs, there's a number of evidence-based work, and one of those background documents is the design guide, which does talk to massing, context, site character, setbacks, and all of those measures and parameters that you spoke about, Chairman. And also, I think it's worth just reiterating that national policy does not actually state that policy should be directing the height and the scale of development, and that should be left to quite right the detailed resolution of the design process through the planning application process, which has already been done on some of these projects with the pre-application process, and we've seen the way in which the architectural style and the way in which development schemes evolve over time through consultation with the expert element leads within the council.
Thank you. Councillor Melvin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the committee should note that the SPD does not legally form part of the local plan. Red 19, which was actually approved last month. It only serves as a material consideration to aid the determination of planning applications. If we didn't have an SPD, it's essential, because if we didn't have an SPD, we would not be in a position to expose any planning applications which we might consider to be inappropriate. So the SPD per se is essential and is a general guide and not an absolute requirement per se. And in any event, query that is subject to JR within, I think the report says 6 weeks, but I suspect it might be 12 weeks. So that needs to be checked. As I said, it has to be there as being the framework and doesn't detail exactly the conditions. Anything that's going to be on the
I think I'm advised 3 months is the time. Thank you. We have to correct that. We'll look at that one. Councillor Ashford.
Just confirm the governance like how we make them.
So it's best to be upfront, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, thank you for contributions on that. So there are, and thank you for those questions. There are 3 recommendations on this, and either way, regardless of what happens with the article just referred, we do need an SBD. So, Councillor Cook, you indicated I think that you would support this, so I understand. But can we go to the recommendations of those in favour? And those against? 7, 4, 5. Thank you. Okay, that is carried. Thank you. So the SBD is carried. Thank you very much. So that's it. So we now move off the topic of Hendon Hub and the borough's SBD. Now we move on to item 10, the strategic community infrastructure levy allocations. And this